Hey guys, welcome back to a new video on my channel, and this video is kind of special for me and it's going to be a bit vulnerable. So this video is the video I wished a UI UX designer would have told me years ago when I got into this. I wish a senior UI UX designer would sit me down and tell me some of the harsh truths that I had to face and took as in with a grain of salt to actually develop further in my design career to get my first job. And so this is not a success video in like 3 months. For me, actually it took 10 months. It took me a lot of hard work, and this is something I don't see when I watch other channels and everybody is focused on the 12 weeks or 3 months or 6 months, while it took me 10 months to find my first time full-time job. I was coming from a programming career, and even then it was a lot of hard work. So I am going to be sharing with you this video today so that you can just sit back and take these advices. Some of these might sting a bit, but I believe for most of you who are grinding it out right now when you're applying to jobs, some of these tips will be very useful to you. And I wish somebody had told me these 2 years ago when I was considering design as a new career for myself when I was in university. Now, like many of you, when I first began designing, I thought my side projects were actually pretty good and that I actually had done the full design process. I knew how to actually interview people, and I tried to make them as good of an actual product as I could. I did my user interviews, I did my iterative design process, but the harsh truth was that I really didn't understand business. I really didn't have anything of a experience where I had to work with a developer when I was a designer. Even though I was coming from a development background, I hadn't had these real skills because all I was doing when I was doing my side projects was basically some sort of a simulation. And in 2022, it's very hard for you to find your first UI UX design job if you are only doing side projects. So my number one advice for you is to bulk up your resume and portfolio if you want to get those interviews and that job. You have to focus on two things. The first one is doing work for your local nonprofits. The second is doing some sort of an internship. And for me, I did both of them, and both strategies helped me land my first UI UX design job tremendously. And there is really a simple way to go on about this. For the internship, what I want you to do is write in a list 10, 20, 30 people of all the family, friends, peers, colleagues you know in the tech industry, and you are going to call each of them. And if you can't call, at least email or text each of them by saying, you do a bit of a chit chat, and then you end with, I am looking to get an internship to get into this X field. Do you know if there is an opportunity, and can you recommend me 2 people who I might actually contact? This is very important strategy, because when you are doing it this manner, you are actually telling the person what you want as in terms of help, and what you are actually considering as in like your goal, your career change. And the final thing matters the most. You are asking for 2 people. Now, this is specific enough and small enough of a favor. Now, it's not that the person has to give you 10 names or unknown names, but 2 is a small enough number and specific enough number that any person can actually think of that number of people and connect you. And this is actually how I got my first internship, my first kind of like internship, the full-time UI UX design position at Halagon. And I did it after my, I think, less than 10 calls in. Now, the reason your UX design skills simply are not good enough is, I'm assuming because this is going to be your first design job, you might not know that it is actually likely that you might work for a small to medium company where you might need to have a general skills. Of course, you can go for a Fortune 500 company where a UX researcher will do research or a UX designer will only do wireframing. But to actually cast a bigger net, you really want to improve your UI design skills so you can sell yourself as a whole package. And that's what I really needed to do. When I was first looking at my first time job, I was really trying to sell myself on my analytical process that I had gathered from my software engineering background. So I thought I could do very well when I was actually doing user research and implement my design process till the mid-fidelity wireframing level. But that wasn't enough. I had to improve my UI design skills considerably, so much that I actually had to practice almost every day to improve them so that I could make my portfolio much more presentable and also I could deliver more value. So my advice to you, for all of those folks who are watching this video and you know your UI skills aren't as good as your UX design skills, craft matters. I'm going to give you 2 tips on how to improve, and the number 1 rule before I give you these tips is very important. It's that you have to do more. In this case, quantity will produce quality, and instead of reading more design books, which is what I had done, I would suggest you to actually design more. And to do that, I am going to give you these 2 tips. The first tip I'm actually giving you is that I want you to go start a daily UI design challenge. This is very going to be good for you because you can do the daily UI design challenge. I think it's for 100 days, and even just doing it for 30 days when you compare yourself to all the other designers will actually be very beneficial for you, and it will actually improve your game because you will see or understand where you stack up against senior designers or worldly known designers, and that will be a very good starting point. And if you really want to do this even better, my second tip for you is do it in a manner where you can copy work. So what I would do is, when I began the daily UI design challenge, let's say my task is to actually design a sign up button or a sign up form, I would do my initial design first. Then I would go to Dribbble and find a senior designer who did the challenge and that I really like their approach of, and I would copy their work and compare and contrast. When you actually copy a work, whether it is in writing, painting, or designing, you really understand the level of details of thought. You reverse engineer why a designer designed a particular solution in that manner. I know how hard it is to actually go on, put yourself out there and face rejections. I remember when I was first applying to jobs and I had applied to 50 and I didn't get even a single interview, and it hurt so much because I had been 18 months in and I still didn't have a single interview to my name, even though I told everybody I know, friends, family, that I wanted to be a UI UX designer. And you know what? The problem wasn't that I wasn't getting interviews. The problem was that I didn't know what the problem was. Now, if you think about your interviews as an application process, you actually have a kind of a funneling problem. So at the top, you have your screening interviews. Then you have your first time interviews, then you have probably your technical, then you have your final, let's say product design challenge, then you have the final team meeting, then you have the offer. So you have roughly 3 to 5 interview stages, and at the end you get the offers. The problem is this: how do you know what kind of a problem you have to fix to increase the amount of interviews you can get at a particular stage? For example, a person who is at the offer stage but has gotten 3 final interviews and failed all of them probably has a different problem than a person who hasn't even got their initial interviews. While the former might have a problem with their presentation skills, probably the latter, the person who can't even get the initial phone interview, has problems in their portfolio or resume. And this is a big problem. us not knowing what problems do we have to solve depending on the interview stage we are at is a very big problem. And to solve this, the best thing to do is to actually track your numbers, because what gets measured actually can be improved upon. So I would track every number, whether that is your application number, amount of applications you are doing, whether that is your phone interviews, amount of phone interviews you are getting, or amount of final offers. Now, I know all of these numbers from my last job search, and they actually give a compound interest, because if I were to go look for another job, I could still go back to these numbers and know if my new resume is as good as my old resume or better in terms of its conversion numbers. And that is the advice I would give you, to actually know your numbers so you know what to improve or what to potentially improve. Now, I am giving this advice because it's the only advice in this whole video where I haven't followed and I still regret it to this day. When I began my job search, I wanted to devote to it full-time attention. I had roughly 6-7 months of savings lined up, and I was also freelancing on the side to earn more extra cash, and that was brutal because I was an anxious mess. I would wake up at 3 a.m. complete anxious, can't go back to sleep, so I would go for a 5 to 6 to 8 kilometer run. And even then I was exercising pretty hard, eating pretty well, but my anxiety was through the roof, man. It was not good 6, 7, 8 months, and it was rough. So if I could, I would go back and actually get let's say a part-time dev job, or even like work as a part-time, like as a waiter or a manual job, where if you have your full-time job you can keep it or you can get a part-time job, but any sort of a job that can give you your monthly amount of necessary spending that will let you live will put a lot of ease to your mind, and this will help you actually negotiate better when you actually do your interviews at the offer stage, because you already have an income to actually support you, so you are not as desperate as you might be otherwise. And the second thing it will help you is it will also help you be a literally much better human being to your parents or partners, because it's very tough to not have the anxiety and have it rub off on the people you love. So it will calm your nerves and it will be better for you and your closest relationships. I would advise you to actually have a job unless you have a 12-month savings. Now, this is literally what kept me sane. Like, if you watched the previous advice like a minute ago, I would wake up at 3 a.m. because the job hunt is a long search, and if it's your first design job, it's very hard to break in. And running saved my life. Literally, I would go for 5, 6, 8, 10k kilometers run in the middle of a winter. In Halifax, it will be -15, and I would go for a run just to calm myself. And it would, at the end of each run, I would actually be a lot more calmer, and I would tell myself one step at a time, one day at a time. And exercise is a must, and the more close to your goal, let's say to getting your job, let's say at the final interviews, I would suggest for you to do add more exercise workouts to your routine, because you will be much more of a mess probably, and exercise really helps calm your nerves. Also eating healthy, but really exercise works wonders. That was the anchor for me, and I'm really grateful I did that part right. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video, and if you really like this video and you haven't already, please click on that subscribe button below so you will get a notification when I upload a new video about how to grow in your UX design career, and that we will be able to stay in touch. Now, I also added one video and one playlist to the end of this video that I believe will actually help you develop your UX design, interview and user experience skills even further so you can get better in your career. Make sure to actually check them out. Have a great day.